iOS 14 myths busted. You've seen it here first. I'm Dave Granfield. We're about to do a podcast episode. You guys have been lapping up our content about Apple's iOS 14 update and ATT, the technical jargon about what Apple's doing to protect its users' privacy, but also how it's affecting Facebook advertising, Instagram advertising. So I've got Jay Janis, our agency COO, on a Zoom call just here, and we're going to do an episode and bust 4 myths about Apple's iOS 14 update and how it will affect your advertising. So sit down, get comfortable, have a listen to this, and Jay, are you ready, mate?
Absolutely.
Let's dive right into what Jay and I talk about.
If you're going to take the risk of running advertising online, shouldn't you get the benefits of learning from someone who's in the platforms every second of the day? Welcome to BidPixel.com's Marketing Ear Biscuits, the original podcast dedicated to digital advertising run by 2 Aussie guys who ride around in kangaroo pouches and drink Fosters and 4X beer.
Hey Jay.
Hey, how you going?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad.
So I haven't had you on a podcast for a little while. You've been a little bit busy, let's just say. Agency life is good for you, keeps you on your toes. What I wanted to ask you is, or I wanted to go shot for shot with you today on a few myths about iOS 14.
Yeah, well, that's probably where my head's been for the last little while now. So yeah, sounds great.
Yes. So for those that don't know, Jay's been really busy just with Facebook, iOS 14, Apple's security updates. Obviously, we've already done a few little posts and video content about that. iOS 14, though, there's been a lot of information getting out there. Some of it's accurate, some of it's not. You were doing a lot of dial-ins with Facebook, talking to our rep directly, sitting in on a lot of their webinars and trying to just learn what to make of it, as Facebook genuinely was probably learning to make of it as well. What are some of the things that you've been seeing on Facebook groups that are hearsay or myths or things that maybe aren't as accurate, that people need to be careful of what they're listening to? And then what are some of them? We've got, I think, 2 points each of these myths that we can discuss. So what's the chatter in the Facebook groups right now, in the communities that are involved in sort of ad buying and Facebook ads?
Most of it's centered around just pivoting, how agencies need to pivot, how businesses might need to pivot in order just to adjust and assimilate these changes to their business, and understanding what the impact might be, and mitigating that as much as possible, really. So that's kind of that's where I would say the agencies and have a good understanding of the platform. That's the conversation that they're having. The other conversations that are happening would be those who are not so familiar and not aware of what's actually happening, and talking about workarounds and hacks and that sort of stuff. And 2 very completely different conversations.
So the workaround and the hacks is going to be a very interesting part of our industry moving forward, because we're going to have these peacocks who are promising what they can't deliver, or promising that they've got a backdoor way of doing something. But at the end of the day, the iOS security updates with Apple, if you haven't researched it, we'll put some links below directly from Facebook. It's not just Facebook. It's not just one platform. It's advertising as a whole is going to change, and tracking on devices is going to change. And there is no easy workaround. So that's actually going to be one of our myths today. But let's start with one that I've seen a lot on Facebook groups, and it is that Apple hasn't actually implemented this security update yet, right? So iOS 14 security update isn't actually an active thing on your phones yet. So your results haven't been affected by Apple's changes. Is that a legitimate myth right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the confusion comes around, like it's in the industry, it's talked about the iOS 14 update, and that's exactly what it is. But there hasn't been any information as what version of 14. Currently on my iPhone, I'm at software version 14.4.
That's exactly what I was just going to go look at, right? Like, I think I'm 14.4 as well, so it's not.
Absolutely, but saying that, it's coming. It's not. There's no indication so far that Apple are going to renege on that or pull back from that stance. So it is coming, and it's an Apple instigated thing that's really taking place. And Facebook and digital marketing platforms in general are just adapting to that.
So myth number one, the security updates from Apple have not actually been implemented. They're not in place. They're not affecting anything that you do. But some of the platforms like Facebook are starting to make moves to change their platform, getting ready for it, right? And that's where people might see a difference in something.
Absolutely.
All right.
That's been happening for months now. So, yeah.
You can't blame your ad results or your targeting results on Apple yet because they haven't actually done anything. Is that easy enough to say?
Not quite, but yeah. So Apple haven't made the changes, but Facebook have. They're not waiting for it to happen, so they're making changes actively in preparation for that. So things like attribution windows and the aggregated event setup tool, domain verification, those sorts of things are Facebook's moving forward early in order to prepare their customers and the businesses advertising platform for those changes.
Yeah, so attribution windows, the 28-day attribution window shrunk right down. There's 8-pixel events. We did a 2-minute Tuesday on it this week about it, on how to actually prioritize those events that you want to track in the ability of tracking. All right, so point number one, Apple has not physically gone live with their update yet. Point number two, did you want to talk about that one?
Yeah, so just around domain verification. So look, we've seen a bunch of questions from clients. What is it? Why does Facebook want all my information? Those sorts of things. And so one of the concerns about domain verification is what information is Facebook actually receiving? So I think to bust the myth, we probably just need to understand what it is a little bit more. So up until recently, you haven't needed to verify your domain on Facebook. And you could fire up a Facebook page, you could connect it, and point the landing page to your website and install the pixel, and that's kind of it. What Facebook is asking now is that you would verify the domain, so verify the location that you're sending it to. And in order just to prove the legitimacy of ownership, really. So Facebook, in doing so, in that verification process, you just get a little one-line piece of code, which you just copy and paste into the head of your website or into your DNS records and do a little update there. And all that does is basically Facebook does a quick scan of your website and can see, yes, this person who's verifying has the ability to add that code to the website. Therefore, they own it because they've got all the logins and they can do that process.
It's not unlike Google Tag Manager and putting a bit of Google Tag JavaScript saying that you own that container for Google Tag Manager and you can add your own scripts to it, right? It's a hand up ownership of your domain name. And what I've seen through then those 8 tracking events, you need to do the domain verification to actually claim ownership of your domain before you can do any of those event tracking. So the guys that are sitting on the fence and going, well, Facebook's stealing my data, Facebook's tracking me, you're not going to be able to play on the platform without doing it. And it's not, they've always tracked you with their pixel, right? It's just a case of putting your hand up and saying, this is my domain. I can prove it because I've verified it.
Yeah, and I actually think it's a good thing. Like it'll help prevent dodgy operators from being able to advertise if they can't actually do that verification process.
All right, point number 3 was there are going to be sneaky ways to get around iOS 14's update, right? There's going to be peacocks in our industry who come out and say that they've got a way around it, that they can still track. This is your point, so you're speaking into this one, but I want to go backwards and forwards on a few things because we've talked about different ways of maybe getting tracking or getting the best tracking you can for your purchase events and your funnel, your progression. And what's the myth, and let's bust it, of the sneaky ways to get around iOS 14?
So I would say there's not really any sneaky ways to do it. Facebook are throwing everything at it right now, as are the other platforms are trying to understand what can happen, because it's a bit of a shift. It's a big shift for the company in general. So it's saying that there's ways to attribute and track things that aren't necessary on platforms such as UTM parameters, and being able to keep an update via Google Analytics or another analytics platform, to knowing where clicks are coming from, where actions are coming from. In terms of attribution windows and tracking it back to the actual platforms, such as Facebook, that's where things get tricky, and that's where the iOS 14, the ATT prompt comes in, where if someone opts out of tracking, then Facebook's hands are tied and they can't upload that person's website browsing behavior to Facebook, and attribution gets caught. So is there a way around that? No.
So there was originally talk about first-party tracking, third-party tracking. Facebook's technically third-party tracking. Platforms like Klaviyo owning their tracking a little bit tighter and being first-party tracking. Is there any legitimacy around that? Like, can you push audiences through Klaviyo into Facebook to get around this iOS update?
No. It looks like that's a brick wall. So if somebody opts out of tracking, so when they get the prompt from Apple, it says something along the lines of, do you allow Facebook or whatever platform to track you across your web activity? So are you allowing them to track you across multiple websites as you browse the internet? If you opt out of that, then Facebook aren't able to track you. Apple limit then from their browser, limit the events that are tracked to one event rather than currently every event, or previously every single event. So as that rolls out and time goes on, there's a potential where the visibility that Facebook has on a user's activity and browsing will be hampered, and so the information they have about individuals will be reduced.
All right. So what about platforms like Wicked Reports? They have their own tracking ability. Is something like that going to give the ability to extend out attribution windows again and get true tracking per platform basis?
Yeah, platforms like Wicked Reports seem to be fantastic, where you're able to track attribution across multiple platforms and track user interaction as well. It operates in a very different premise to, like, it's not pixel based. It completely, from what I can see, adheres to all of the current legislation and the regulations around first party data. So it can give you a really good insight. And it's the platform that, if you're spending a lot of money, on digital advertising, it's a really handy bit of kit where you can get a lot more granular insight into how your ads are performing and how people are finding out about your business and where those decisions are coming from.
Right. Yeah. So number one was iOS 14's update hasn't actually been implemented. Number two was domain verification is genuinely legitimate on Facebook. Number three was there's going to be sneaky ways to get around this update. And number four is the myth that only Facebook will be affected by this. Is that true or false, mate?
Well, it's any app that's on the App Store, the Apple App Store that is tracking.
Hang on, stop right. Any app
whatsoever.
So as soon as you download an app, like, I don't know, let's find an app. I've got Active Campaign. Active Campaign is going to probably get the similar notification pop up and say, does you want Active Campaign to track? Or LinkedIn or TikTok or Snapchat, they're all the same thing's going to happen.
Yeah, there hasn't been anywhere near the amount of information coming out on about other platforms as what there has been with Facebook. But seemingly any app that tracks users across their web browser activity and can use a unique identifier on a device, they will receive that prompt.
So it's not Apple versus Facebook. It's not Facebook taking on Apple. It's genuinely Apple's genuinely concerned about the privacy of its users, and it's something that they're implementing to make sure that Apple device users are safe and secure. It just so happens that Facebook, Snapchat, all these other platforms are going to be affected by it down the track. And Facebook's probably just the vocal one with the muscle behind it to start doing something about it early and to start finding a solution for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of conjecture around at the moment about Apple's motivations for doing it. Is it users' privacy? Is it because they have their own platforms coming forth? Is it for, who knows? I think time will tell on that. but yeah, it seems that it's on across its app or iOS device wide. Anything that where a platform can use the device's unique identifier to identify a person and their browsing activity and record it and store it for the benefit of that platform. Will pretty much be under this scrutiny.
Cool, mate. All right, that's 4 points. Anything else to add to this?
No, that's it. More to come.
Easy, mate. There's always more to come, right? All right, so the myths of iOS 14's update with Apple. Pretty clean and clear on some of those myths. It's well documented now on Facebook and on Apple. There's definitely ways that you can research it for yourself if you did want to find out a little bit more information. Jay has his ear on the ground talking with Facebook very often at the moment and just working out for our personal customers with the agency what we do moving forward. Yes, you are going to see a difference in your attribution window tracking. You are going to see a difference in how you're attributing, say, if you're an e-commerce store, sales, right? Or if you're a lead generation business, how you're attributing leads. Doesn't mean you're going to get any less sales or any less leads. Not necessarily. It just means that you're going to have to do your own research and dig a little bit deeper as to where your dollars were spent and where the return was from those dollars.
Yeah, maybe we should do an episode on that.
Let's do an episode on that. Let's do it.
Cool.
You know what? Let's do it. Now, I'm going to wrap this episode up. I'm just going to finish talking to these guys and I'm going to wrap this episode up and then we're going to do it straight away because you're a hard man to lock down and I've got you now. So we'll just do it. All right. So that's it for this episode, the myths of iOS 14's update with Apple. And stay tuned next week or whenever we get it launched because Jay and I are about to actually chat about, what were we chatting about?
Attribution windows
and how moving forward you're going to track your advertising dollar on platforms like Facebook. All right, guys, if you liked this little conversation, last time we did an iOS 14 Facebook update, it was probably one of our most popular videos that we've ever done. If you like this, please subscribe to YouTube, subscribe to the podcast channel that you're listening to us on. Hit the like, all that usual crap that people on YouTube say. We just genuinely want you to be able to watch and listen to our content if you're getting value from it. So thanks heaps, Jay. I'll talk to you again in a couple of minutes.
Sounds good.